Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Tuesday, January 5th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and it's not an uncommon sight across the county. Restaurants defying the COVID-19 restrictions when it comes to dining. But right now, one local city council is reaching out for public input as leaders there look to implement stricter enforcement. KPBS reporter John Carroll says the Carlsbad Council has already gotten an earful from residents who want outdoor dining to continue.
Ever since the state stay-at-home order went into effect on December 5th, some restaurants in the county have chosen to defy it and stay open, at least for outdoor dining. In Carlsbad, a handful of restaurants have shown where they stand by keeping their doors open and putting signs up. Michael Curran represents a couple hundred restaurants, gyms, and salons across the county, including in Carlsbad. He says staying open is not an act of defiance, rather just peaceful protest. And he says up until now, Carlsbad police have been handling those protests the right way.
Carlsbad police have pretty much come in and said, well, you're aware of these orders. You're supposed to be following them, but we see that you're not. We see that you're in the midst of a peaceful protest. Here's a box of masks. Have a nice day.
But that could now change. Up until now, the Carlsbad City Council had just 4 members on it, and when they last voted on enforcing public health regulations, it was a tie. But now there's a 5th member on the council. Councilmember Corey Schumacher called for today's special meeting.
This is really about getting to a point where with a 5-member council, we can give very clear direction on what we expect out of our staff and what we expect from our community members when it comes to taking care of each other during a public health crisis.
If emails to the council in advance of today's meeting are any indication, Schumacher and her colleagues could face some stiff opposition to stricter enforcement. Please don't run us out of Carlsbad. We rely on these restaurants to keep us sane. We will all just go to Encinitas or Oceanside to dine if you shut them down. From another, I really don't want giant corporations to own everything in Carlsbad or SoCal. Please support allowing restaurants to remain open and allowed to have outdoor dining. There is nothing scientific that says eating outside and following the guidelines spreads COVID. But there was also support for increased enforcement. Please fulfill your duty and enforce state and county health orders regarding closure of businesses and limiting restaurants to takeout only. Our health depends upon it, especially with the new COVID variant surfacing in our county. Councilwoman Schumacher says there have already been 28 cease and desist orders issued by the county in her district alone. If stricter enforcement is approved, fines could range from $100 to $500 per violation. John Carroll, KPBS News.
New developments tonight in Encinitas concerning businesses violating the regional stay-at-home order. As we reported yesterday, officials there had issued formal warnings, and today the city says it may move forward with revoking permits. Restaurants were told last week they could lose their sidewalk seating permits if they remained open during the state-imposed shutdown. Currently, restaurants are only allowed to open for takeouts. Another deadly day for the pandemic in San Diego County with 56 deaths and more than 1,800 COVID-19 cases. Health officials also reported additional instances of the new, more contagious strain, 24 confirmed and 4 probable. One woman was hospitalized but is now recovering at home. The newly confirmed patients are from San Diego, Chula Vista, La Mesa, and Lakeside. They are believed to have no travel history and come from 19 different households. The investigation and contact tracing are ongoing. The state is allowing dentists to administer vaccines in order to close the gap between the volume of doses received and those actually administered. But KPBS health reporter Taryn Mento says the county is taking local measures to expand vaccine access for prioritized groups.
Nearly 200,000 vaccine doses made their way to San Diego County facilities, but vaccinators have only administered about 47,000. Dr. Rodney Hood is a San Diego physician who sits on state and county vaccine advisory groups. He says the challenge is not all facilities that need the vaccine have the capacity to store it.
And even if you're able to store it, you need to be able to deliver it with PPE and expertise to staff to be able to vaccinate.
He says the county is launching regional vaccination sites, or pods, to make it easier for prioritized groups to access a vaccination.
It's easier to have strategic pods rather than trying to get it to the small practices because of the storage issues.
The local advisory group that Hood helps chair is meeting to discuss vaccinations for critical workers, older adults, and those with medical conditions. But there are still many more vaccinations to be done before we reach those populations. The schedule right now prioritizes those in healthcare or long-term care facilities. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
A San Diego County spokeswoman did not immediately respond to questions about when the regional vaccination pods will be launched or where. Control of the Senate will be decided by Georgia voters after the record early turnout and massive amounts of money raised for the two runoff races. Polls are now closed. Nadia Romero is in Atlanta, Georgia, where the count is underway.
People pack the polls.
The entire country is looking at Georgia right now as to what our decision's going to be.
To make their picks in the high-stakes runoff races, hanging in the balance, control of the United States Senate.
It's up to us. Do we want to take it or we don't?
If both Democrats win, each party would have 50 Senate seats. Incoming Vice President Kamala Harris would serve as the tie-breaking vote, essentially easing the path of the Biden administration.
This is the last line of defense against this radical socialist agenda, and really our last opportunity to protect everything that President Trump has accomplished over the last 4 years.
Already, more than 3 million early voting ballots have been cast.
This is history unfolding in Georgia right now.
But if November's election is any indication, it will be a nail-biter of a race.
Are you ready to show America that Georgia's a red state?
More than $500 million have been spent on ads.
Georgia's on everybody's mind.
But these voters say it's not the money that matters, it's the potential for the future.
For blacks, for community, for justice, equality. I cannot name the reasons and how important this election is. God gave us a voice to be heard, to speak for what we believe in. And it's left up to us to use it.
In Atlanta, Nadia Romero, KPBS News.
The effects of the passage of Proposition 22 are starting to take their form. Albertsons has announced it plans to fire its grocery delivery drivers at its Vons and Pavilion stores in California and instead will use third-party services. The United Food and Commercial Workers International Union today condemned the move. In a statement, the union said it is, quote, calling on Albertsons to immediately halt these plans and to put the health of their customers first by protecting the jobs of these brave essential workers at a time when our communities need them most. California voters passed Proposition 22 in November. It exempts app-based gig companies from treating their workers as employees, allowing them to continue classifying them as independent contractors. The change is set to take effect February 27. The new federal stimulus package contains about $54 billion for K-12 schools nationwide, but how much will flow to San Diego's schools? KPBS education reporter Joe Hong explains how this money could help school districts stay afloat as the pandemic enters its second year.
San Diego County school districts will get about $390 million from the stimulus package Congress passed at the end of 2020. About $128 million of that is going to the San Diego Unified School District. But the county's largest district will need even more money if it wants to heal the academic wounds caused by distance learning.
It's a good first step.
Richard Burr is the vice president of the school board at San Diego Unified.
but there's a lot of work that needs to be done both at the federal and state level to get schools the resources that we'll need over the course of this next really couple of years.
Barrera said to really address the long-term effects of the pandemic on schools, the district will need to fund an extended summer school in 2021, hire more mental health professionals, and shrink class sizes for the next several school years. That said, this latest surge of federal aid will help avoid the more immediate disaster of staff layoffs.
And that's important and critically important. The people who are working so hard to educate our kids right now, the last thing that we need to do is give them a sense of anxiety that, they may not have their jobs, going into next year.
A statewide education expert agreed with Barrera that additional rounds of federal funding are needed. She urged the federal government to provide more money, especially to districts serving more students of color, English learners, and students from low-income families.
What we know is going to be important about that funding is how it's spent.
Alicia Smith-Arriaga is the executive director of the Education Trust West, a Bay Area-based think tank and advocacy group.
We owe it to students and to parents and families to actually use this as a moment where we accelerate student learning. And we have an opportunity to do that.
Arriaga says it isn't good enough to use this money only to go back to how things were. She is urging state and federal officials to fund services that would address the pre-existing inequities in education that were exacerbated by the pandemic. Joe Hong, KPBS News.
The latest government funding bill includes over $1 billion in border wall spending. KPBS reporter Maxwell Nadler tells us this has opponents of the border wall worried that despite protests from Democrats, wall construction still has bipartisan support.
Since the start of the Trump administration, new border wall and border wall replacements have stretched across San Diego County. All the while, local Democratic politicians have criticized the border wall, saying it doesn't keep people safe and pushes people determined to cross the border to do so in dangerous and isolated areas. But last month, Congress approved over $1 billion for border wall funding, with bipartisan support, including all of San Diego's Democratic congressional delegation.
Honestly, it did not surprise me, given that we've seen bipartisan support for border wall funding and infrastructure in prior administrations.
Pedro Rios is the director of the American Friends Service Committee's U.S.-Mexico border program. He says that while President-elect Biden has pledged not to build any more border wall, that doesn't necessarily mean he won't follow through on existing contracts or find other ways to spend money on border barriers, including replacing existing border wall.
Oftentimes what's being replaced are what are known as Normandy fence barriers, which are very short, meant to stop vehicles, with 30-foot tall bollard-style fencing that will be catastrophic to the environment and could possibly be damaging not only to the environment but to people that live in the area.
The Biden transition team has told KPBS that it would rescind the national emergency along the southern border that has allowed the Trump administration to bypass lengthy cultural heritage and environmental reviews to expedite border wall construction.
Looking at how that fast tracking circumvents a law, it doesn't do justice to any sort of due process, and it really undermines constitutional protections that border community members have.
A proposed border wall replacement project in San Isidro is set to begin in the coming weeks, unless the incoming Biden administration intervenes first. Maxwell Nadler, KPBS News.
The ribbon is cut on a long-awaited addition to San Diego's beach communities. The new West Mission Bay Bridge will allow cars, bikes, and pedestrians to travel between the Midway District and Mission Beach. Federal dollars covered most of the cost. Traffic will be diverted from the old bridge over the coming days. San Diego's new mayor, Todd Gloria, thanked construction crews for their work.
For the rest of your life, you'll be able to take your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids to see what you built and allow them to say that I did that. And that kind of pride is more than a paycheck. That's about building a great city, which is what we're a part of here today.
So the old bridge will soon be demolished. In its place will rise a second new bridge to handle southbound traffic. The city's website has a live camera documenting the progress.
Our dry seasonal weather continues, not only for this week, but next week as well. Next week could be warmer. We'll see some clouds from time to time, just some patchy low clouds near the coast, some high clouds for others. And we'll see our winds shifting from slightly onshore to slightly offshore. Could see the winds increase a little bit here, I would say Friday night into Saturday. So there you can see our temperatures slightly warmer Wednesday and Thursday, then a little cooler perhaps Friday into Saturday. One thing we can tell you for sure, the surf's going to be up, and we do have high surf advisories here. That continues right through Saturday. Temperatures tonight dip down to 38 in Oceanside, 46 San Diego. Ramona's at 33. Grab a nice warm jacket. And El Cajon's at 44. Here's our weather tomorrow. Well, again, the moisture stays to the north, so we're left with the dry conditions here. Forecast high 66 Oceanside. San Diego's at 66. El Cajon quite comfortable at 75. El Cajon's at Ramona's at 71. Borrego Springs 75. And Pleasant 63 in Mount Laguna. Well, dry and pleasant Thursday. Moisture stays to the north. We know the drill. And as I look at our forecast for you, partly to mostly sunny skies with us next couple of days. You can see it could get a little bit warmer here by Sunday. The inland sections quite comfortable. Temperatures staying close to 70 or in the low 70s. Clouds and sunshine here in the mountains. Low 60s, upper 50s on Saturday. Checking out the deserts. Well, it looks beautiful here. Next couple of days, temperatures slowly on the rise, and then temperatures back off a little bit over the weekend, but there you can see it partly to mostly sunny skies. So our dry weather continues, and unfortunately, looks like a dry week probably ahead into next week. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
In Los Angeles, hospitals are so overwhelmed with coronavirus patients that the county is telling ambulance crews not to take cardiac arrest patients to medical centers if they can't be resuscitated in the field. Across hard-hit Southern California, ambulances are being forced to wait to bring in patients. Stacey Butler followed an EMT crew for a night in Orange County.
Responding to another call, EMT Jimmy Webb picks up a patient in Garden Grove, jumps in the back, and then continues to Los Alamitos Medical Center and prepares to wait.
We're waiting 2, 3, 4 hours minimum. Used to be a 7 to 10 minute drive to a hospital. Now we're having to drive even further for hospitals that are open since everything's closing. Could turn into a 30-minute drive just to get to the hospital and then to wait another 3 hours.
Another patient is wheeled to the door, only to wait. Finally, Webb's patient is treated in a tent outside.
6433, start for Harvard and Maine.
Back at the dispatch center of Care Ambulance in Orange that runs one of the largest fleets of ambulances in the Southland.
They're so busy in Diamond Bar that we had to send one of our ambulances from down the street up there to help them out with a call in LA. So
6399, copy, head forward, Euclid and Trask.
A full staff of dispatchers can barely keep up with the ambulance demand.
Just confirming you guys copy McFadden, Bristol. You're the only unit in Santa Ana at this time.
It's just call after call after call. From one to the other, it's hard to keep up with the demand of the ambulances. The amount of 911 calls we receive and send our ambulances to is just out of control.
For the first time, they're relying on this new dashboard that shows how long wait times are at OC hospitals. At Kaiser Baldwin Park, a 6-hour wait for the ambulance to drop off a patient.
This is the peak, and then the next couple of weeks we're going to get more. I think we're going to be in some trouble.
CARE is offering vaccines to its frontline crews. Webb and his fellow EMTs are first in line.
I had a football buddy just yesterday morning. He died from it. He's the same age as me, graduated together, and then his brother passed from the same thing just 2 minutes later. It's real, it's deadly, and it's killing people that don't have complications and health conditions.
Not gonna lie, I'm nervous, but I am, after doing my research, it's a risk that I'm definitely willing to take. I know there are some side effects that can happen, but I think the benefits outweigh that.
That was Stacey Butler reporting. In an emergency, 911 is the first and fastest call to make. But what if calling on the phone isn't an option? San Diego residents can now text 911 for help from police, fire, and EMS services. Texting is a better option for those who are deaf, hard of hearing, or have difficulty speaking. In an emergency, you can text your location and the nature of the emergency, and a dispatcher will follow up with questions and instructions. Photos and videos cannot be sent. The service is only available in English at this time. County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher is taking over leadership of the board. Supervisors voted unanimously for Fletcher to serve as their new chairman. The newly elected Nora Vargas will serve as board vice chairwoman and Joel Anderson as chair pro tem. Fletcher listed his priorities for the county, including tackling climate change and the pandemic, improving racial justice, building more affordable housing, and providing quality health care.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, balance of power. Georgia voters decide control of the U.S. Senate and much of the Biden agenda. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Arts organizations have been hit hard by the pandemic. As KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando tells us, San Diego Opera discovered that lessons it learned from an earlier financial crisis have proven useful during these current challenging times.
Back in March, San Diego Opera was planning to stage The Aging Magician featuring the Brooklyn Youth Chorus. Then COVID-19 hit, preventing the children from traveling.
We were the first opera company in the United States to have to postpone or cancel performances due to COVID. So it hit us very early in March, and then we had to postpone the rest of our season. And so since then, all we have done is think about being nimble and pivoting and trying to find ways and explore ways to produce opera that can guarantee safety.
David Bennett took on the role of San Diego Opera's general director back in 2015, amidst fears of closure. Little did he realize that the response to those financial challenges and what the company learned from it would be helpful during this current pandemic.
As a result of the near closure, we wrote new core value, mission, vision statements. And one of the core values that came about at that point was, through nimble adaptation to the changing marketplace, we preserve the future of San Diego Opera. Now, that was really in response to, I think, a financial changing marketplace, right? The fact that we almost closed. But boy, there is not truer words that could be spoken about where we're living right now as a company, right?
The opera has proven extremely nimble and adaptable. Back in October, it built an outdoor stage in the sports arena parking lot, so it could be one of the first opera companies in the U.S. to return to live performances. It produced an innovative drive-in version of La Bohème.
One of the protocols that they established was, for an outdoor performance, which we did, each singer had to have 120 square feet of their own space, and you couldn't encroach in the space of another singer. So that was a challenge, and that was defined by 15 feet in front of your mouth and the next singer, and then 4 feet on the side. So of course, if the singer turned, then you had to increase that space of 15 feet. That was a challenge. So we had to come up with some creative solutions to make sure we told the story of La Bohème within the constraints of safety.
Restrictions on what kind of performances San Diego Opera can do means they cannot generate the same income from ticket sales as they used to in the massive Civic Theater. But even that has led to some new opportunities.
But what we did find was that we had some new sponsorship opportunities that came to us because that we were doing something outdoors that really reached the whole community in a way that it didn't if we did it at the Civic Theater.
So far, San Diego Opera has not had to lay off any staff thanks to the nimbleness it learned from its earlier financial crisis. Now a pandemic is challenging the company and demanding new innovations that in turn can be used after life returns to normal, like taking advantage of San Diego's climate to perform outdoors.
So that's our first sort of big learning experiment, I would say. So I think that will be something we'll continue to look at post-COVID. So challenges can give you a lot of opportunities, let's put it that way.
But Bennett knows 2021 will be a challenging year.
But how long you can be an opera company that's not producing opera and still stay in business is the big challenge. So, we've been very lucky because we haven't had to furlough or lay anyone off. We did receive the PPP funds that came through during the summer, which helped us retain employees, but we've still been in a situation that we haven't had to do that, which has been terrific.
Bennett and San Diego Opera are ready for whatever challenges the new year poses, and they look forward to when they can stage live opera without restrictions, so they can bring shows like The Aging Magician to a theater where it belongs. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
Here's another look at today's top stories. 56 deaths from the coronavirus and over 1,800 cases were reported today, and the number of cases of the more contagious strain is growing. Health officials reported 24 confirmed cases and 4 probable ones, bringing the local total to 32. They are from San Diego, Chula Vista, La Mesa, and Lakeside. They are believed to have no travel history and come from 19 different households. The Carlsbad City Council is considering stricter regulations banning indoor and outdoor dining. Some restaurants have chosen to defy the stay-at-home order that went into effect last month. A lawyer representing restaurants, gyms, and salons across the county says staying open is an act of peaceful protest. If stricter enforcement is approved, fines could range from $100 to $500 per violation. And San Diego County is taking steps to expand vaccine access for prioritized groups with plans to launch pop-up clinics. Only about a third of California's available COVID-19 shots have actually been administered so far. Older adults and those with medical conditions are next in line, but right now the priority is still those in healthcare or long-term care facilities. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.